The inner revolution, why this matters now. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the most extraordinary incarnation in human history. We inhabit an era where the ancient barriers between seeker and teacher have dissolved with unprecedented efficiency. Wisdom, once jealously guarded in remote monasteries, protected by geographical isolation and institutional gatekeepers, now flows freely through digital channels that transcend every traditional limitation. The spiritual masters who once required arduous pilgrimages to reach now extend their influence across continents through modern day technology. This represents far more than just convenience. It signals a fundamental shift in human possibility, one that renders obsolete the elaborate hierarchies and institutional controls that have dominated spiritual seeking for millennia. I've witnessed not just Eva, but many other healers of similar caliber conduct healing sessions over Zoom and upload energetic blockage removal videos on YouTube to be watched numerous times over. It all sounds like bullshit. I know, I get it. Profound spiritual healing transmitted through the same medium that can bring us cat videos and political arguments? I thought the same at first, until I felt those energies for myself in a way I couldn't deny. Myself and many others I came across and researched have experienced such transmissions and rapid consciousness expansions firsthand, not always in person too. There exists something greatly subversive about receiving life-changing spiritual expansions over the phone while sitting in a Sunoco parking lot. This is why more people are able to awaken now than ever before. And that's pretty awesome, isn't it? Modern technology has enabled the divine to work through healers by transcending the limitations of physical space, facilitating profound consciousness shifts in minutes that traditional therapeutic methods might labor years to achieve, if ever. And this is threatening the fear-mongering business models of most major religions. For centuries, the spiritual establishment has operated on a fundamental fraud, teaching about God and existence through an unbroken lineage of intermediaries who lack divine experience, each generation passing down interpretations of interpretations rather than lived truth. There are countless books authored by mind-level thinkers citing other mind-level authorities or teachings. The same pattern we see in megachurch pastors preaching prosperity gospel while hoarding wealth, self-proclaimed gurus teaching about ascended masters they've never met, or authors writing about mystical experiences they've never had. While many of them aren't wrong, the most valuable sources are those who have direct, immersive contact with the divine, offering guidance grounded in lived experience rather than intellectual speculation. It's all a parroting horror show filled with deception to extract financial resources, psychological control, and unquestioning loyalty from believers, perpetuating us versus them narratives that maintain the extraction system while, especially at the highest level with institutional religion, those in charge profit from truths they've never actually experienced from source. Never trust the poor man's opinion on how to get rich. This principle reveals a fundamental truth about spiritual knowledge and its sources. Why would you seek consciousness guidance from someone who remains unconscious? Yet this describes the vast majority of our spiritual authorities. Pastors who preach about divine love while radiating anxiety about non-existent hell. Meditation teachers who lose their shit when they get cut off in traffic. And thought leaders like famous psychologist Jordan Peterson, who offers sophisticated analyses of human behavior while never having touched the deeper dimensions of their own being. It's all mind-based nonsense. When Christ spoke of the kingdom of heaven being within, how many of those who claim to represent him or follow his core teachings have actually discovered this inner realm he spoke of? They speak eloquently about salvation while remaining fundamentally stuck in suffering, about peace while carrying inner turmoil, about love while operating from fear-based conditioning. This creates a peculiar situation where the blind lead the blind with impressive credentials and institutional authority. A local preacher might hold advanced theological degrees and possess encyclopedic knowledge of scripture, yet if he's never realized his true being, the only thing that actually matters, his guidance becomes as useless as a truckload of dead rats in a tampon factory. The same limitation applies to academic spirituality, where professors dissect mystical texts without ever having touched mystical states, and psychologists analyze consciousness while remaining completely identified with their thinking minds. They offer maps and territories they've never visited, describing experiences that they've never had to an audience hungry for authentic wisdom. This is why the truly awakened consistently point toward direct experience rather than conceptual understanding. Someone who has realized their true nature speaks from an entirely different source than someone merely repeating learned information, regardless of how sophisticated the information might be or how charming and convincing they may sound. Yet observe our most celebrated intellectual figures and quote unquote life coaches, whatever that means, as they stumble when they venture beyond their narrow domains of expertise. Jordan Peterson's famous book, 12 Rules for Life, for instance, offers genuinely competent guidance for navigating psychological challenges, providing practical tools for establishing order in chaotic lives. Peterson understands how to help people construct functional lives within the conventional framework of existence. His insights into personal responsibility, the importance of meaning over happiness, and a psychological necessity of challenging oneself can contain real wisdom for those trapped in cycles of victimhood and self-pity. For someone drowning in a psychological disorder, his systematic approach to rebuilding basic competence can prove literally life-saving. But Peterson, like virtually every other psychologist, operates solely from the mind level, maxed out at mental understanding, while presuming to instruct others about the deeper nature of existence itself. Peterson and modern psychological thought leaders serve admirably in teaching us to cope with life's difficulties, yet they cannot address what life actually is, let alone teach us how to literally uproot current and past life traumas to take us from surviving to thriving. Their frameworks operate entirely within the assumption that the personality, the illusory self we believe ourselves to be, is real and must be optimized. They completely miss the source. Suffering originates from the ego. It's like discovering dog shit on your floor daily and investing in superior cleaning equipment instead of addressing the pet that is creating the mess. Peterson and modern psychology engage with their subjects' personalities rather than guiding them toward their true being, the only lived experience state where suffering literally can't exist. This is the difference between a competent mechanic and someone who grasps the fundamental law of physics. Psychologists can help you tune your psychological engine, but they cannot show you how to transcend the vehicle entirely, how to live from permanent peace, love, and equanimity, rather than merely managing your neuroses more effectively. This limitation reveals itself most tragically in cases like Dr. Gregory Eels, who served as executive director of counseling and psychological services at the University of Pennsylvania. Recognized as an expert in resilience and mental health, he dedicated his career to helping others navigate psychological distress. Yet in 2019, Dr. Eels ended his own life by jumping from the 17th floor of his Center City, Philadelphia residence. He was a man who had spent years studying and teaching the mind's mechanisms and how to live a happy life. Yet because he never experienced his true nature, he never found true happiness. The pattern repeats endlessly across our cultural landscape. Authors, motivational speakers, and thought leaders pontificate about optimal living while remaining prisoners of their own unconscious patterns. They offer strategies for a better life without ever questioning the fundamental assumption of who is living that life. The mind can only take you so far, Eva once told me. It has to be transcended to get into upper states of consciousness, to access true freedom and liberation. It's why her company's motto is heal to be free. Additionally, every human knowledge claim rests on a mathematical absurdity, a delusion so widespread that functions as the hidden foundation of all intellectual discourse. It's what I call the I think problem. Anytime you hear somebody say, I think, followed by any statement whatsoever, you witness a profound cognitive error in action. Even at the pinnacle of expertise in their field, they possess an infinitesimally small fragment of information drawn from an unlimited potential of knowledge. A client scientist might declare, I think carbon sequestration technology represents our best solution because, yet even within his narrow specialty, we possess only a current understanding of atmospheric chemistry and carbon cycles. This knowledge evolved from previous theories that seemed equally certain to earlier generations and will continue evolving indefinitely as future discoveries render today's certainties obsolete. Medieval physicians were absolutely certain that bloodletting cured disease. Early psychologists were convinced that lobotomies represented breakthrough treatments. Economic experts proclaimed the housing market could never collapse just months before 2008. Each generation of experts speaks with the same confident authority, never recognizing that their certainty rests on a foundation of sand. The same truth can be expressed even more simply using a limit formula from calculus. If we let n represent the entirety of current human knowledge, which is a finite number, and let x represent the size of all possible knowledge, then as x grows without bound, the ratio of n divided by x approaches 0. This means that no matter how much we know, when compared to the infinite scope of what could be known, our share is mathematically indistinguishable from nothing. Another way of saying it, any finite number divided by an infinite number is 0. Nada. Zilch. This means that whatever anyone currently thinks, regardless of their credentials, experience, or reputation, represents finite knowledge divided by infinite possibility. The quotient is always 0, making their I think statements about as useful as a screen door on a submarine. Yet our culture continues to worship at the altar of expert opinion, never questioning the basic mathematical reality, all the while wondering why their advice so often leads us astray, far removed from consistent happiness and love in our lives. This explains my unwavering criterion for selecting spiritual teachers. I trust only those who have transcended the fundamental limitations that plague ordinary human perception. Those rare individuals who have broken free from the prisons of finite minds, primitive scientific instruments, and a circular reasoning that traps conventional thinkers in endless speculation. I place my confidence mostly in the teachings of the masters, the ones who have actually achieved unconditional love and perpetual peace, and can actually see the universe itself, from the astral planes to the Akashic records, to past life influences and beyond. But more on all of these in later chapters. Until I've entered the states they speak of and can abide there with steadiness, I must walk the path with a dual compass, trusting the wisdom of the masters and their teachings, yet returning always to the truest measure I have, the clarity of my own direct experience. In the end, it is only what I have seen with the eyes of my own awareness that I can truly, fully trust. And any teacher who has truly walked this road will tell you the same. The best guru is the one within. I heard from quite literally every master I spoke with. This book will guide you to your first teacher and, in time, to the discovery of the teacher within. But before we begin this journey together, though, let me clarify the terminology I'll use throughout this book. I use various terms for the ultimate reality: God, the absolute, the I am, source, consciousness, Brahman, and the LCS, which means the larger consciousness system, interchangeably. I particularly favor the LCS because it emerges from Tom Campbell, an enlightened former NASA physicist who explored consciousness through thousands of out-of-body experiences, testing spiritual phenomena with the same rigorous methodology he applied to space projects. I prefer this terminology because when you mention God, you immediately trigger conditioned responses in readers, reflexive acceptance or automatic rejection that prevent genuine inquiry. Campbell's scientific framework creates neutral territory where devout Christians or Buddhists, for instance, can engage without feeling threatened, while committed atheists can explore consciousness without triggering anti-religious conditioning. LCS arrives stripped of religious baggage, inviting investigation rather than demanding belief or disbelief. While I have met Campbell personally and deeply respect his contributions and cite him often in this book, even his systematic approach illustrates the fundamental limitation that you cannot think your way to direct experience. The most awakened beings consistently point away from belief toward immediate recognition. As Campbell himself insists, don't believe a word I say. Your direct experience is all that matters. It's like telling a virgin what sex feels like. You just got to experience it. Similarly, one of the most famous contemporary American non-dual teachers, Angelo DeLillo, echoes in his book, Awake, It's Your Turn. He says, The truth cannot be learned or taught, only recognized. Ramana Maharshi, perhaps the most revered sage of the 20th century, who experienced spontaneous awakening as a teenager and spent decades guiding seekers through pure self inquiry, he summed it all up in one line. Truth is not to be found in any book, it has to be found within oneself. Again, Christ famously declared, "The kingdom of heaven is within." He didn't speak of distant realms or external salvation, but of an inner treasure that religious institutions would spend centuries obscuring with their elaborate fear based hell doctrines and money grabbing power structures. Heaven is here, now, inside of you. You just need to remove a little dirt off that old mirror to see it, even get a quick glimpse of it, to then get it out of your conceptual database and into your experiential database, as Campbell would say. You incarnated in this era for reasons that extend far beyond coincidence. If you were reading these words, or hearing this podcast, or hearing this audiobook, you likely represent an ancient soul who has spent lifetimes preparing for this particular moment in history, where the fastest soul growth is happening. The Divine Mother, the orchestrator of this whole existence, divinely guided you to this work, perhaps to, well, get your ass moving already. I approach this work with intense practicality and deep respect for efficiency. My story and the lessons I share here will speed up your awakening in ways past generations couldn't have imagined. I boiled it down to the core wisdom you need. If this were the only book you ever read on consciousness, it would give you everything to start your journey. And remember, your awakening represents far more than personal information. It's the biggest contribution you can also make to humanity and potentially the rest of the known universe. A theory we take a dive deeper, way deeper into later. That's because, in part, when you connect with your true nature, you stop feeding into the collective unconscious and you raise the vibration of every other person around you and on earth. And I do mean that literally. This impact operates beyond ordinary perception, invisible to our extremely limited eyes. Yet for those masters who have developed the capacity to perceive reality's deeper mechanics, those who can actually, quote unquote, see these energetic transmissions, they report an effect of unfathomable magnitude. Or as Ramana Maharshi said, your own self-realization is the greatest service you can render the world. Or as another master once told me, it's greater than even if you had found a cure for cancer by a long shot. This book exists to help you claim that gift for yourself and for all beings, both on earth and beyond. Welcome to the most important journey in all of existence.